Welcome back to another episode of the Bleed Los podcast. And with the calendar finally turning to December, the MLB hot stove is about to take off. That said, I'm joined on this episode by friend of the show, Rob Bradford from Baseball Isn't Boring. We'll discuss the latest Juan Soto rumors, whether the Dodgers spending is bad for baseball, and much, much more in this conversation today. But before we dig into all that, let's thank our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds from everything football, NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, and MMA, you name it, BetOnline has it. Head to BetOnline today and get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. And Rob, the last time you were on here, it was a couple months ago, right after the All-Star break. A lot has happened between now and then. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, man. You guys are some of my favorites, so I appreciate you having me on. And a World Series was won, and a lot of stuff happened and continues to happen. That's why we love the Dodgers. Like this is why they they're the straw that stirs a drink when it becomes to all things good in the world when in following baseball. And we got a taste of that in the World Series, which I was thrilled to be at both in LA and New York, and then obviously all the conversations after the World Series, and then all the conversations leading in the off season. It's just you guys hit the sweet spot of the great game of baseball. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it was a roller coaster of a season. There was some highs, there was some lows, and then in the end, in October, with two of the most historic franchises meeting in the Fall Classic, a lot of people wanted that to go more than the 5 games that it ended up being. And then you also saw from you're a very Red Sox heavy fandom on your side. A lot of Red Sox fans were rooting for the Dodgers in this one. They didn't want the Yankees to get that infamous 28th ring. And then the way it unfolded in that fifth inning of Game 5. I mean, I feel like the Red Sox have a lot of jokes, a lot of ammo now for Yankees fans for the foreseeable future, and definitely another one if whatever we've been hearing reported comes to fruition, which we'll definitely get into later. The first thing I kind of want to get in with you over Thanksgiving, there was a lot of reports coming out and a lot of back and forth between national beat writers and then these smaller media outlets, whether it's reporting from fan blogs or self-owned websites. Juan Soto's the big fish this offseason. Obviously, we know the type of deal that he's going to get. It's going to be massive. We've seen numbers thrown out there, whether it's 5, 6, maybe even $700 million for the type of deal. But it seems like the Boston Red Sox are heavily invested in this guy. I'm curious to where are you buying any of these rumors? Have you heard anything? Do you think Soto could end up in Boston after he just spent, the past regular season with their biggest rival, the New York Yankees?
Yeah. To answer your question, yeah, I do. I mean, I think that still I would put the Mets as the leader in the clubhouse because at the end of the day, Steve Cohen, he's going to find out what the price tag is and then pay $20 more. I mean, this is just how he can operate. He's it's documented. This is how he's done business in life outside baseball, life inside baseball, and when it comes to the Red Sox, yeah, sure, they can say that we have shown that we can sit at the table. We have anteed up. We have the buy-in, which is whatever $600 million, but you haven't shown that you are going to be able to do the shock and awe, which is necessary to beat a Cohen. I mean, so or maybe even the Dodgers. So I think that there's a chance. I think the fact that they're committed to spending that level of money, there's absolutely a chance. And then if you are willing to spend that level of money, you do have angles here. You can be the face of the franchise where these other places they already have the face of the franchise. You have the relationship and growing up, the Red Sox fans and fans of David Ortiz. David Ortiz lives in the same complex that the Sotos do in the Dominican Republic. So there's a lot to be said. I think every team has a unique case here. Every team, when I'm not talking about obviously the Sacramento A's, but it's every team that has had a meeting with Juan Soto, or has shown or put an offer out there for Juan Soto, has a unique case. And but I come back to it. it's so crazy. The Dodgers, I'm not just saying this because we're on here, but how can you ever rule out the Dodgers for anything? Like, you can't. You just can't. It seems like an embarrassment of riches, and it seems like, oh well, the Dodgers are going to be like, oh, hey, if you want to come, sure, but we're not going to tie ourselves into knots to get you. However, it is, people A want to play for the Dodgers, and B they have the money to pay him. So why not? Why not? So yeah, and to come back to the reports, I think everybody means very well. I think everybody maybe has bits and pieces of information. You get into this world of trying to find out stuff, it becomes very, very competitive. And that competitiveness, I've seen this a ton of times before, Cody, that this level of competitiveness, when you get into something like this, everyone wants their sort of pound of flesh. And a lot of times they're right. A lot of times we find out they're right. But there's just more of it than we ever have seen before, in large part because that's the way the world works right now, in large part because of social media.
Yeah, I think you really hit it on the head right there because the amount of people that have a platform, even including this page right here, for the most part, we're ordinary fans. Yes, as the years have gone on, we've gotten access to the clubhouse, on field stuff like that. We've been able to engage with, a variety of different sources who have, accurate, accurate information out there. But for the most part, a lot of these fan blogs, they want their name to be known. And sometimes we don't know if they're putting out factual information, factual reports, and I think that's the reason why everyone is very skeptical. And you, if no one's seen it yet, Jeff Passan, he put out the tweet against all of these guys that are saying, I'm thankful for people that do act like tweet out actual reports and don't do like fabrications and stuff like that. Pretty big dig. I've seen there's like growing, I guess, competitiveness between the smaller guys and the big guys, especially over the past, I would say, 5 years, because we've seen a lot of these smaller blogs start to become more popular, but there's always the actual MLB insiders. I wasn't really buying any of the rumors or reports anyway. I don't think Soto would sign on Thanksgiving Day, but having the Red Sox name just thrown out there makes me really feel like a lot of that is true.
Well, let me
And
ask you this, Cody, not to interrupt you. Do you feel like, because I'm in the middle of it, right? Do you feel like the Red Sox Twitterdom or Twitterverse or whatever it is, in regards to what we're talking about, is much heavier than any of these other markets are in on Soto? Like, I don't get a sense that the dynamic with the Yankees or the Mets or even the Dodgers or the Blue Jays to this level. But I want to make sure I'm not just thinking that way because I'm in the middle of it.
no, I actually would say I think where it comes from is because of fans' frustration and a lot of the people that are, the head of these Twitter accounts or these blogs or these websites or these, podcasts, radio shows, or whatever you want it to be. I think it's very similar to how the Dodgers were with, Otani last year. There was a lot of reports saying out there like, the teams met, there's these offers were made out there. Not to the extent where I would say like a lot of people were saying, yes, this is a done deal set in stone, because Otani's thing was very, private. But I think Red Sox fans and the people that cover the team day in and day out, and you can attest to this, I feel like they're hungry right now. They want
Mm.
this team to sign the superstar. Mookie Betts' name has been thrown out there time and time again this offseason because they just saw him get not his third ring of his career, his second with the Dodgers, more than likely going to end up in the Hall of Fame, and he's going to be wearing a Dodger cap. And that rubs a lot of people the wrong way in Beantown. They said, you got to get a superstar. And credit to Heim Bloom. He was brought in there to revamp their farm system after Dave Dombrowski went all in during his tenure there, ended up winning the 2018 World Series. Bloom gets out. Craig Breslow comes in. Now the Red Sox have one of the better farm systems. They have the money to spend, and the fans have been asking this ownership group to put the ammunition out there and go get the big fish. And I think it's time that they get a big guy. And Soto just seems like he could be the face of that team for this next, decade plus that he's going to be signed there. So I think Red Sox fans are just easy to pull the trigger, or whoever has these reports like, oh, that's the deal that's offered out there. There's no way he's turning it down. I'm going to plug this out there right now. I think that's where all this is lying right now. You can tell me if I'm wrong on that.
No, no,
That's just
I
a
think you're
general vibe.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there's, when Dave Dombrowski left town, the the idea that the Red Sox were going to win every free agent battle that they got into also left town. And the idea that they were going to be swimming with the big boys also left town. And it hasn't been that way for a long time. And now you have a lot of all signs point to they have pivoted back to that way. Now, here's the thing. And so that's why I totally agree with you. This is why I think there's this hunger and thirst on social media and all of this more so than any other place because of this. But all it's one thing to show that we're willing to pay the $600 million for Juan Soto, but that's all well and good. But are you willing to get uncomfortable? Are you willing to do what the other teams aren't willing to do? And do what yeah, sure. The Dodgers, a lot of people want to play for the Dodgers, but the Dodgers are also offering as much, if not more, money, right? So, yeah, you can sell the farm system, you can sell, the future, you can sell all of that stuff, but are you willing to get uncomfortable? And unfortunately for the Red Sox, they have lost the benefit of the doubt when it comes to that because all we have to base it by oh well, you lost out on Michael Waka, you lost out on Seth Lugo to the Kansas City Royals the year before, you lose out on Zach Eflin. We tried. You that is out the window. The we tried is out the window. And so and you know what? The Mets, the Yankees, and the Dodgers, they can do the we tried. You know why? Because they all made it to the Final Four this year. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny you bring that up because pretty sure there was reports out there that they said the Red Sox were runner up to Blake Snell, who they were pushing hard at. Because it seems like the Red Sox, they're interested in two things. Juan Soto's the big guy, but they also want to revamp that starting rotation, whether it's via the trade market. They've been heavily connected to Crochet. They've been pretty much attached to every top starting pitcher free agent, whether it's Max Fried, Corbin Burns, Blake Snell before he signed with the Dodgers. It seems like everything is moving forward for a big market team like the Boston Red Sox to actually put some, money where their mouth is right now and reinvest that faith into their fans. Cause I've seen that time and time again right now recently as well, especially on Boston, social media. They don't really have faith in getting the job done in free agency or something like that. So when they see these reports, I think you're starting to get them back in there. But that also goes to Rob. I'm interested in your opinion on this because I've seen varying opinions, especially on Dodgers Twitter or Dodgers social media. And that is when it comes to Juan Soto, the contract that he's potentially going to get. Obviously, we saw last offseason, Ohtani got the massive $700 million deal, 10 years. Modern day value due to the deferrals and everything in between that, it's around $46 million per year. So it's really 10 years, 460. There's reports out there that Soto's going to blow past 500 million. We're looking in the 600 million range. And then you have Steve Cohen's reports where it's saying, hey, if you offer whatever X amount, he's going to go $50 million over. How high do you think this is going to go? And do you think the Red Sox or a team like the Dodgers, are they really going to compete with that? And do you even think a hitter like Juan Soto, who's not the best defensively, not the best, on the base paths, but is one of the best hitters we've seen in our generation, do you think he's worth that amount of money? Do you think the Red Sox, Dodgers are going to compete with, the Mets, who have seem to around the league be the favorite to land this guy because of their pocketbook?
Yeah, it's first of all, if we're gonna say what teams should be the most desperate to get him, it's the Yankees, right? Like you take him out of the Yankees, I think they become a dramatically different team.
Shell of themselves. I mean, look at
Yes,
last year before he even joined the team. They missed the playoffs.
right. They missed the playoffs. We saw this is, everyone's chasing their tail about how to build a baseball team. And this is where the Red Sox get in trouble because they're like, oh, look at the Tampa Bay Rays. Look at how they do it. Well, no. And how you do it is you saw the Dodgers, you saw the Yankees, you saw the Mets, you saw how you build it is, the Guardians aside, that you have your guys at the top of the order that you have to power your way through, right? There's something to be said for that dynamic. And if you take him out of the Yankees, that dynamic leaves the building, with all due respect to Jason Dominguez. So it is so I think that yes, these teams, I said it before, that in order to get the meeting, in order to sit at the table, there has to be a buy-in, there has to be this understanding. Now everybody does believe that Juan Soto is going to just take the highest number, all things considered equal. He's going to take the highest number. I don't know, I can't crawl into Juan Soto's head. I don't know. It's interesting. I was going back, and maybe this has absolutely no bearing on anything, but on the Baseball is Boring podcast for Monday, we have on Johnny DeBuglia. And Johnny is a guy who he signed Juan Soto for the Nationals. And and the other teams, I think it was Detroit and Arizona, who were also in on him, but they got in on him late. And I believe like one of the teams offered him $2.5 million, Soto, and he signed for 1.5. And he said, I did it because I agreed to do that. I agreed that's where I was going to do. The relationship was built and everything else. And I don't know, maybe that is not apples to apples at all, but it is in the back of my mind that's all. I don't know Juan Soto personally, but I talked to enough people about him. And there's a reason to come back to your question: is he worth it? Yeah, he's not a great fielder. Yeah, he's like a one-dimensional player, but he's not a one-dimensional player. He's a guy who, in that clubhouse, in that franchise, that you are building the whole thing around. So don't just look at it as he can't field and he can hit, or what position he's going to play, or what side of the plate he hits from. No, understand this. There is an element and a value to having that guy as the centerpiece of your franchise. And I think this is another reason why I think a team like the Red Sox is willing to say, yeah, you know what? We haven't spent that money before, but we've been saving up, and this is the guy we're going to do it for. I think that part of the deal is a huge, huge part of the whole thing.
Yeah, I think people have to understand that 26-year-old Hall of Fame bound, the way he's been playing, like career players hitting free agency this young do not come around often. Most guys, when they get their first really big free agent payday, it's kind of in their late 20s, early 30s, and then you get them to maybe like a 8-10 year deal max, like we saw with Otani last year. But we have the potential to have him get the longest contract in terms of years and dollars just because of how young he is. And I'm not one of those guys that's arguing saying, yeah, I don't he is a one-dimensional player. He's not going to bring much value. Is when I see Juan Soto in the batter's box, and this is probably just me being, looking in the back of my head as a Dodger fan. I remember 2019 very well, him hitting the home run off of Kershaw, his presence in the batter's box, even in this World Series. Out of all the players that played for the Yankees, he was the one that showed up. His presence never changed. He got on base. He had the home run off of Yamamoto. The throw home almost got Kike Hernandez in game one when he tagged up to give the Dodgers the 1-0 lead. He does things right. He has a really good arm, and it's just the age and the ability to build around him, like you said. So I could definitely see a team like the Red Sox going all in, but you could also see some other teams that maybe want to shell out some more money. But at the end of the day, I have to agree with you. I think the Yankees should be involved way more than we've heard reported. Maybe they're just keeping things close to the chest, but a lot of reporters, even the Yankees beat writer, the other day came out and said he doesn't really expect them to finish top 3 in the bidding. And I said, man, that would shock me because I think even though Aaron Judge is the face,
Mm.
Juan Soto's the production. He
Yeah.
changed the entire dynamic of that
Coda, I would
lineup.
always, with the Yankees, if you go through the history of the Yankee signing guys, Brian Cashman is really good about basically sending out false signals and not tipping his hand. I mean, Aaron Judge, go back to Aaron Judge. This was go back, and they're like, that Yankees are out. Yankees are out. And I mean, this is what he has done going back to Mark Teixeira and before that. So I never, with all due respect to any reports, everyone's working hard and trying to get information. A ton of the information is right, but I will say this: is that like every time I say the Yankees are out, I don't buy it. I totally don't buy it.
Yeah, I just feel like they're not in this situation to not to those reports should 100% hopefully be false for them because just to the player that what he did to the team this past year. We'll kind of switch some gears here now, kind of going to the Dodgers and what they've done this offseason and last offseason. Obviously, that's been a big debate in baseball right now. We have, salary cap stuff being brought up, their deferrals being brought up, how they're kind of abusing the system. Outside looking in, for you being in the Boston media, they're another large market team. I haven't really seen a lot of the big market teams like the Yankees, the Mets, the Red Sox, complaining about what the Dodgers doing, because it would kind of be hypocrisy a little bit in a way, spending a lot of money. But what the Dodgers have done this last two off seasons, last year they spent over $1 billion. This year it doesn't look like they're slowing down. They signed Blake Snell to the $182 million deal. They extend Tommy Edman the other day, and each of those deals had deferrals. Do you think it's a good thing for baseball that they have like a new villain now, a new like quote unquote evil empire on the West Coast? Or are you going with the mob right now? We're saying that maybe we need to renegotiate the way we do these payrolls.
No, man, like, anybody who's complaining about the Dodgers is just not seeing the forest through the trees. I mean, they're not cheating. They're taking advantage of the system, which is in place and anyone can do. And more importantly, they're taking advantage of their reputation and their financial might. This isn't this is part of the equation, like, where in order to get free agents to come to you, you have to utilize every single thing that you have. And that's including creativity, contract creativity. That includes the willingness to pay that money. Ultimately, they're going to have to pay it. And so, a lot, some teams don't want to do that. And then a big part of this with the Dodgers, it is Blake Snell. Sure, he signed with the Dodgers, but he could have signed with other teams. Other teams that probably would have paid him, a pretty good amount of money, if not more, maybe. But there is that element with the Dodgers where more and more and more players are going to and have wanted to already play for them. And this isn't like something that just because they won the World Series, this has been going on for a few years now, because a lot of big part of it, and maybe this isn't, and it is probably like relates to a Blake Snell. Players that talk around baseball is when a player goes to the Dodgers, that player is going to become better. The Dodgers are going to find the best version of their player. It's called the Ryan Brazier, right? It's called we'll send you away, learn a new pitch, and here you go. I mean, and it doesn't always work out, but it works out a lot. And players in baseball have seen that. Blake Snell sees that, and that's a very, very powerful thing. And that's what, honestly, this is another thing that these teams, whether it's the Red Sox or Yankees or whatever, they are trying to sell as well. You can say what you want about the Yankees, but what the Yankees did for a guy like Luke Weaver, like, this is what they're selling these pitchers. So, yeah. So, but the Dodgers are head and shoulders. Anybody who's sour grapes about them shouldn't be. Good for the Dodgers, and good luck to everybody else catching them.
I like the point that you bring up that they're taking advantage of the system that's currently in place, because at the end of the day, all 30 teams around the league can take advantage of that system. I think there's a lot more other factors that we can definitely get into another day. And I'm definitely, writing this for our website, DodgersBeat.com as well. I think another factor to all this, especially free agency last year and this year, the TV deals. There's a lot of teams around baseball that had money before that are now nationalized through MLB, and they don't have that influx of cash like the Dodgers, especially the Red Sox. The Red Sox were one of the first teams to implement a TV deal as large as theirs. The Dodgers, they're getting revenue of like $300 million per year to put into their team from their TV deal. Other teams around the league can't say that. And I like how you mentioned, we've heard it from players that we've interviewed. We've heard it from, around the league, where players want to come to Los Angeles, especially if they're kind of on the outside looking in, take a 1-year contract, fix their swing, fix their mechanics, add a pitch that makes them well, and then they test free agency again and get, a multi-year deal. We've seen it time and time again. And you mentioned it doesn't always work out. Noah Syndergaard's the one that is right off the top of my mind, because he signed with the Dodgers in 23. Same exact sentiment said out of his mouth, but it ended up not working out. They ended up trading him to Cleveland to get, to kind of get rid of him. Going off all that, do you hear from any players, especially over the last couple of years, like, do they think, because we had the comments by the Cardinals, Miles Malakas, at the beginning of the year, where, he said, they're playing checkbook baseball. Is there a sentiment around the league that players don't like what the Dodgers are doing, spending money? Or at the end of the day, they're like, no, we want them to spend money. We want them to set the market. We want to get, payroll increased.
Well, it's funny you say that. The first thing that comes to mind is Torey Lovello was on the podcast. This wasn't even last year. It was the year before last. The year they went to the World Series, heading into that year. And I love the speeches that managers give to the entire organization the first day of spring training. It's sort of setting the tone. I said, "Oh, Torey, give me your speech." And part of it was, because at that time the Dodgers are already spending money, and part of it was let them buy their teams. Like that's what he was. That's what his message was. Because like obviously the Diamondbacks aren't going to keep pace financially with the Dodgers, and it actually worked out. The Diamondbacks made the World Series, but I think that can be a rallying cry. But if you ask the players, nobody is holding it against the Dodgers to say like they're spending the money. You know why? Because if they get a chance to get some of that money and play for the Dodgers in beautiful Los Angeles at beautiful Dodger Stadium and a team that's winning all the time, a team that's set up to win, then why not? It would be the same way with Atlanta. You have all those really, really good players locked up. All right, they're spending money. Players want to get paid and players want to win. That's it, right? Forget about everything else. Those two things are at the top, and then we can talk about everything else after.
And the last point on this, one of the big things I've seen brought up is the term of a salary cap. Hasn't been implemented in baseball. We've seen it implemented in, the NFL, the NBA, and various different ways. Players are 100% against it from everything I've read and heard, on various podcasts and media. Have you heard the same thing? Because it's like Ken Rosenthal reported on Foul Territory the other day. He said, hey, if it's brought up again at the next CBA after the 2026 season, they're going to go on a strike. They're not going to want to agree to that. So are you hearing that same
Never.
thing?
It will
Do you
never,
agree with that same
never.
sentiment?
It'll never. The whole union thing's too strong. They won't go on a strike. It'll be bad for baseball. It's just it just won't happen. I mean, because the perception already from the players is, we can't forget, Cody, like the animosity that we've seen between the players and the owners starting back in the pandemic and then going to this last lockout. And so they can't, there's already this perception for the players where they're thinking you don't want to bring up the C word, collusion, but they have brought up this in the past. JD Martinez sat there. I remember him saying this. It's like, are you kidding me? You can't, he said, what he said, he's like 80% of the teams aren't trying to win. And that resonated. Now that might be extreme, but still, like that's the perception of a lot of players. It just won't happen. And the union is just too strong. The animosity between the owners and the players are just too strong. It's too heated. Yeah. So what I would like to say this, hey, can we get a deadline, some deadlines in the off season? Forget about, that's what I want.
That's
That'll
a
never
big one.
happen either. Because,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's like that's the one thing that separates MLB offseason, where obviously coming up we have the winter meetings. You usually get most of your action happening during that month, or especially during that week. However, as years have gone on, we've seen it go later and later in the year. I mean, hell, we saw 4 of Scott Boris's guys not signed until March last year, and we saw how that turned out with them. That's another added element of why I think Blake Snell signed as early as he did. He said,
Oh,
"Hey,
no question.
I don't want to do any of that at all
No.
again."
No, and you're gonna
So
see, and you're not gonna, and that's, I would be shocked if you see any players, forget about that many players, do that again, because it is, the extreme with Jordan Montgomery, not only because of how ineffectual he was, but also because how he overtly ripped his agent or his former agent and Scott Boras for basically blaming him for a big part of like what happened. So I just look at it, Cody. I mean, like you look at the lockout sucked, right? The lockout was terrible, but it was an awesome offseason. Just, December 1st, yeah, you had to get deals done by December 1st. And then when they came back, you had to get deals done in a couple of weeks before the season started. It was great. But we'll, again, probably never see it again.
Yeah, I do remember that off season. Everything happened so fast before the lockout, and then once teams broke out, they said, "Hey, well, spring training starts in a couple days, so you better finalize your rosters now." So I would definitely like to see that. I mean, if you look at the NBA and the NFL, most of these guys, the top free agents at least, are locked up pretty much the first 48 hours, I would
Oh,
say, and that's something I wish baseball
it's
would
the
go
best.
towards.
It's the best. Like the NBA free agency is awesome. It's great. It's great.
So hopefully MLB could definitely try to tap into that because going back to where you said we don't want a lockout to happen because I feel like baseball is kind of on the up and up right now. We're seeing a little bit of a renaissance right now. Clearly, with the World Series having two large market teams, East Coast versus West Coast, it definitely blew away the what was the 2023 World Series. And no, not to discredit the two teams that were involved on it, but it definitely wasn't what the MLB was up to the standards in terms of viewership. I feel like more people are talking about the game. We have a lot more star talent than we've ever had before. You can make the argument for that. So I feel like we're in a little bit of a good period in baseball. And
Oh,
I
and Cody,
definitely,
think about could to go back to the lockout. I'll never forget that when they got together in Jupiter and it was like the it was over. The negotiations went terrible. It was just like beginning of March. And I remember because our good friend Joe Kelly wrote an op-ed for the LA Times, and it was like, "Hey, let's remember why baseball is good." And then that time we had forgotten why it was good because everybody off of that meeting said baseball is they just dug their own grave. That's it. That's it. It's never coming back. It's a bridge too far, and sure enough, a week later, they settle it, and it didn't take long. And then you have Manfred doing his tours, and but it didn't take long to get back. And and you're right. I mean, I think that in large part because another great postseason, a postseason that had really interesting teams, big market teams, and now you can have another great offseason. So I do think that baseball for all of us is good, right? For what we do, it's especially good. Good for business.
we'll end it on this one with more of a Dodgers take. I'm curious to what you think the Dodgers are kind of going to do the rest of the offseason. Obviously, I mentioned it doesn't look like they're done here with the signing of Blake Snell. Clearly, they have Teoscar Hernandez, who has been heavily linked between Boston and LA, along with some other teams that could definitely use an offensive first outfielder. You're looking at the Dodgers. They're looking to be the first team since, the early 2000s Yankees to make a repeat in terms of World Series, back-to-back champions. Um, Outsider looking in. What do you think is going to go down this offseason? Or what do you think the Dodgers are desperately looking into? Because we've seen them interested in Juan Soto. We've seen them interested in multiple big names, whether it's trade, free agency. Seems like they have a lot of ideas. Any take on that?
To start with Teoscar Hernandez. I mean, Teoscar sitting down with Teoscar Hernandez. He was listen as he said at the All Star game. Is if the Red Sox come in and they meet the request of a 3-year deal, he's playing for the Red Sox this year. But they didn't. So he goes to the Dodgers, but now he's with the Dodgers. And we're talking about like how players view the Dodgers, especially when you're in it and what you see they do for you. And then you win. And Teoscar saw all of that. So I think that for Teoscar, he really loves the Dodgers. I think he would probably love to come back. I know he would love to come back, but at the same time, come back. You have to offer the better deal. Like you have to offer the better deal. And I think that what the Dodgers have going for them is that if they're competing against the Red Sox, haven't proven that they can offer the better deal, and that would be seen like their biggest competitor for Teoscar Hernandez. I might be wrong, but that would seem to be the case. And then you hear, I saw the interesting rumor about Carlos Correa today at shortstop. And that's the type of thing where sometimes you see these rumors of guys that can happen. But when the Dodgers are involved, yeah, of course. Why not? Why not? Because another thing that Freeman's really good at, he's not afraid to trade prospects. He's not afraid to trade these guys. And that's such a huge part of being executive, identifying the right guys. Like they get Mookie Betts. Well, they identified the right guys to trade, right? And it didn't hurt them. They still held on to their top guys. And yeah, they've traded away some good prospects, but it's okay. And sometimes you got to do it. And if Carlos Correa is a guy that you think is going to be a good fit, and I think he would be an excellent fit there, then great, do it. So it's yeah. I mean, I think that, and then of course Sasaki, it's that whole thing, and I just, boy, man, like as I'm talking through it, it is good to be a Dodgers fan, man. It is. It
Yeah,
is.
right now, the sky seems to be the limit this year. I think people don't really understand. They look at the CBT payroll and they're like, "Hey, this is going to be their fourth year in a row going over that third tax threshold. They're getting taxed 110% for
Who
any free
cares?
agent signing.
Who
Money
cares?
is but an object to this team. Otani is basically a factory, a money factory for them. The international market, especially, that's where I favor saying I'm not, trying to be biased where I said, why wouldn't Sasaki go? Why would he go anywhere else? The terms of marketing and dollars that he himself would make and the team would make, it seems like that would be the most logical choice for him. Have the Japanese trio in LA that's just going to print some stuff over there. I'm pretty sure Otani can get him a New Balance deal. We'll see what goes on with that. But I just feel like the Dodgers don't care because they know the window that they're in. It's not going to come, another time. And we mentioned this last offseason where it was like, hey, you only have Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts in their prime once. If you add Shohei Otani into that, you really only have that once, and that rarely happens in baseball. You need to go all in, and I think most people around baseball understand that now.
I think that I think it was Zach Scott, the former Mets GM, was on with us, and he said this, and I totally hit home. Teams don't value winning the World Series enough. Like winning the World Series is is a really, really powerful thing for a lot of reasons, including the business of baseball. I mean, this is an enormously powerful thing. And I think some of these teams get so caught up in, oh my goodness, we're going over the CBT, we're going to be bumped back 10 spots in the draft order, whatever it is. It's like, well, are you going to win the World Series? I mean, yeah, you might not, but to get to be able to take that chance, and like John Henry, when he came out in the Financial Times this past year, and he had the quote about, well, you have a 30-1 chance, 20-1 chance to win the World Series. It was such an utterly ridiculous comment because number one, if you thought that way, like why even bothering? And second of all, it's not like you're at the blackjack table where you got cards and that you're not getting new cards. Like if you want in baseball, if you want to change the odds, you can buy new cards. That's what it is. And I think that that's one of the things that Dodgers have been really good at. They did it at the deadline. This is another big part of this is that of not being afraid to just say, you know what? We're going to try to win the World Series, which obviously there's no going back on that now with the players they have. But I think more teams should understand that, and I think they lose sight of that.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. And then you mentioned the revenue aspect of winning the World Series. Teams can make over $100 million in extra revenue, whether it's all the gear they're going to sell, the tickets, all the TV time that they're going to be getting, marketing their team, and the team like the Dodgers that has, a lot of star players around the league, they're going to get marketed pretty heavily. It makes sense. And the Dodgers clearly, like I said, they see their window of opportunity. And I think what I would say to fans that are mad, it's not going to be forever. There's going to be a time when the Dodgers either have to reset, some of these guys retire, or I may be wrong. Maybe this train goes for a very long time. I didn't really think, I'm kind of on the young side when people talk about, those 90s, Atlanta Braves, they didn't think that was going to ever end, back like multiple World Series appearances, LCS's appearances, winning the division that many years in a row. And the Dodgers, I mean, it seems like they're gonna blow
You
past
know what
that.
it ends, Cody? When you break up the front office
Yeah,
or
probably.
you get different, ownership and but the great thing about what the Dodgers are doing is that they have a system. They have the confidence in their system. They have a confidence in the way that they do things. They've kept everybody together, whether it's Friedman and Gomes or Galen Carr or Josh Burns and obviously the Dave Roberts. I mean, this is another part of it, this too, which is we haven't gotten to, is the Dave Roberts dynamic where he's going in the last year of his contract, correct? He's going to the last
Yeah.
year's contract.
Yep.
So
Last.
we had this conversation about, well, the council contract's 8 million. Will anyone get $8 million contract? How much? I've got to imagine Dave Roberts wants to stay with the Dodgers. Why wouldn't you want to? You got to enter the Hall of Fame if you stay with the Dodgers. So, but how much are they going to pay? Are they going to get to the $8 million? That's because you know what? Like $8 million is a relief. A guy Joe made $8 million. He's a relief pitcher, right? So again, maybe a discussion for another time, but I think Dave Roberts is going to do all right for himself.
Yeah, they mentioned at the GM meetings about extending Dave Roberts because I don't think a guy in his case would like to be a lame duck manager where he's on that 1 year contract and he doesn't really know about his future for the team. And I agree with you. If he stays with the Dodgers, wins like one or two more World Series, I mean, you can make the argument right now that he's bound for the
Right.
Hall of Fame and continuing the success, riding it out with Otani, Betts, Freeman in their prime. Who knows that, the potential for him to be I'm not afraid to say it, the greatest manager in Dodger history. I mean, it's big shoes to fill with Lasorda, but he's well on his way to beating that.
But you know what, Cody, and you correct me if you don't think this. I thought he was elite in this postseason run. Like this wasn't like you got a bunch of players, good players, and you won the World Series. I mean, this guy was locked in because this was not an easy road to hoe. You had bullpen games. Those were never easy. Even I come back to this scene in Game 5, which, by the way, if they don't do like some sort of doc on Game 5, we aren't trying, right? It's like, come on, let's go. There's so much between like all the crap that's being talked since and everything else. But when he came out to talk to Blake Trinan, and I'm sitting in the press box right behind the dugout, and you could see his first step up where he just goes with his hands like, settle down, I'm not taking you out, which is like, that was such a great move because a lot of guys, number one, 6 years ago, Dave Roberts might have taken him out, but he doesn't. He had the feel for the game. He left him in, and obviously we know what happened.
Yeah, I think he earned his money. And we've made that known on the live streams we did when we went like the post game, pre-game for the October run. And you could see that over the years of failure, the years of falling just short, they've in a way, when you look at him in hindsight, it's like this kind of had to happen as a learning experience. And it's definitely true with the bullpen. I would say argue you go back to his first maybe 2-3 years, bullpen management was not his forte. Uh, the way he managed the bullpens was a big factor of why they lost, whether it was overusage of guys or just bringing in the wrong guys in the wrong situation. It just didn't work out in that moment. But, as years went on, especially this season, he's definitely earned a long-term contract extension. And honestly, for his success and what he's done, he should look at what Craig Counsell got. He should want to
Mhm.
be the top, paid manager because no credit to Counsell. He did a really good things with Milwaukee, but it's there along the lines where their system's a lot more than just a manager. And the Dodgers are kind of along those lines as well. It's going to be interesting to see it shake out, but I would be confident to say before spring training starts that they have a new deal agreed to.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll get 8 because, I like the council thing is everyone's like, "Oh, well, he set the new bar for managers." But to your point, as the season went on, owners could go the other way and say, "Well, is it really worth it?" Because he's not leading the Cubs to where we need to go. And by the same time, I think that maybe even better, the better thing for a guy like Dave Roberts or even Aaron Boone was Alex Cora's contract to be able to get over $7 million. So they forget about counsel. Point to Alex Cora, like, okay, at least reach that. So anyway, again, probably conversations for another time, but we get plenty of time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed our conversation today. We talked about a lot of stuff, especially with the Red Sox and everything that they're doing this offseason. I mean, how big the Dodgers offense or offseason was last year is what I'm kind of starting to expect what the Red Sox are trying to do. I feel like you're hoping that way. A lot of Red Sox fans are
Yeah,
on
well,
that.
they got to prove it.
That's the big thing. They got to prove it. A lot of Dodger fans had that same sentiment, including myself. I said, hey, you can always say they're interested in Otani and Yamamoto, but until they put pen to paper, I mean, I got to see it with my own eyes with them in the jersey. So it's going to be an interesting offseason. I'm hoping, like you said earlier in this episode, that most of, if not all, these guys are signed up. Let's hope for December. Let's hope everybody
Yeah,
winter meetings
man.
comes. People just go. It's a frenzy. Everybody's signed because I think that's good for baseball. It's good for the players, and that's good for the teams. To get the team set in stone, and then go into January, February, like, hey, now we're building the
They
anticipation
used
for
to,
the new
Cody, at
season.
the winter meetings, so they always set up a stage at the winter meetings, right? And they used to just rattle off all these signings and trades, and it was great. And the last few years, I mean, that stage has been empty. It's been not used at all, practically at all. So, yeah, let's hope that stage is used.
Alrighty. Yeah. Is there anything that you have to plug? Anything that's coming up on your show? I know
Yeah,
you
man, I'm
guys are
getting a
branching out.
tattoo. I'm getting a tattoo in Los Angeles. So I'm
Oh man.
flying
Tell us
out
more about
to,
that. What are you getting done?
yeah, so the sat there on the, where was it? Was it Yankee Stadium? I forget. I think it was Yankee Stadium field with Joe Kelly, and I said, Joe, people don't know Joe is the one that he's owns the LLC for Baseballs and Boring, or we think he does anyway. And so I said, Joe, if you guys win the World Series, will you get a tattoo of Baseballs and Boring? Sit in the chair next to me and do it. He said, yeah. But the world-renowned tattoo artist, Mr. Cartoon, who's responsible for the masks that the bullpen guys are wearing during the postseason run, he'll only do it if he did it. Mr. Cartoon has agreed to do it, which we are tremendously honored. So for Joe, it's a quick drive wherever that is in Los Angeles. He already has tattoos, so just add another one. For me, it's my first and only tattoo, and I'm flying across the country to do it
I
on
mean,
December 18th. But
dedication, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna have some collaboration on that.
yeah,
Hopefully,
yeah,
I
I
know
want you
Rogers
guys
reached
there.
out to you.
I want you guys there, but it's all this is all about having fun, good time. And obviously, like, we do it baseball's and boring every single day. Every single day. We do the podcast. So yeah, I appreciate you guys are the best. I really appreciate you having me on. You guys are all part of our podcast family, and yeah, it's believe me, it's being around the Dodgers is always a good time. Always a good time. And talking about the Dodgers is always a good time. Although I will say this, Cody. Last thing I'll say is that, and we've documented this. When Brazier knows this, I made the dumbest decision of the entire baseball season, and it had to do with the Dodgers this year, where in September I flew to Miami for the Dodgers Miami series. And my plan was I'm going to spend the first two games there, interview a bunch of people. And then the third game, I'm going to drive up to where the Red Sox are playing the Rays, 4 hours across the state. So I do that, middle of the night, after game two, drive up, get to Tropicana Field the next day. Just the worst baseball game of all time. 2 hours and 10 minutes, two subpar teams, Tropicana Field, awful, all of it. And as the game's going on, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Oh, it was Otani's 6-for-6 game, the best game ever played in mankind's memory. And my journalistic integrity and instincts were all out the window because I left the opportunity to watch the best game ever played by a human being and chose instead to drive 4 hours in a rainstorm to Tropicana Field. Awful, awful decision. But, again, it's a good story to tell. All right. So,
I feel bad for you. I remember listening to that game in the car. Crazy emotions going through that,
oh,
especially what he did.
he
Couldn't
couldn't.
imagine to see it in
I'm like, he's
person.
not going to hit 2 home runs. He's not going to steal these bases. He's not going to do this. Like, I'm good. That's
Yeah.
Otani.
I mean, yeah, you can never count Otani out. You can never count the Dodgers out, and I'm pretty sure we've kind of established that. And then hopefully the Red Sox get a little bit of that action. Maybe I want to see be awesome to see a rematch of that 2018 World Series,
Yeah.
both of these teams. But Rob, it's definitely great to collaborate with you. We definitely have a lot more content that we're gonna put out together in the near future, especially whether it's this off season and then the 2025 season will be here before you know it. But yeah, thanks again for coming on. All right.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah. And this episode is brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. Thanks, guys.